Summer can be a bit of a slog. For us, it's often for some reason a rather busy time, and I'm sure we're not alone.
Well, you can beat the summertime sadness and the August angst and enhance your everyday with our excellent sponsor, Via Hemp. This is a company that crafts award-winning premium THC and THC-free gummies.
Each of these gummies is especially designed to cultivate a specific mood. Whether you're looking to get relaxed, get quality sleep, get creative, or just to get focused. If you're 21 or older, you can experience it for yourself and get 15% off your first order with our exclusive code MSheet at viahemp.com. That's VIIAHEMP.com.
I personally enjoyed their grapefruit flow state gummies. This CBG and CBD powerhouse really helped me tap into my productivity. Like, we have had an extremely busy summer, and I feel flow state got me over the finish line a few times when I was editing multiple episodes a day, digging through documents, and knocking out a bunch of interviews.
Via Hemp does not require a medical card, and it ships legally to all 50 states. It's also affordable, and even more so for Murder Sheet listeners who get a special deal.
If you're 21 and older, head to viahemp.com and use code MSheet to receive 15% off. That's VIIAHEMP.com and use code MSheet at checkout. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via.
Temp check. What kind of summer are we having this year? A family road trip summer? A beach bum summer? Or a wake me up when the sun sets summer? With Instacart, choose your own adventure and skip the shopping side quests. Where available, you can get ice cream delivered to your hotel, sunscreen to the pool, or cold brew to your bed. Well, door, in as fast as 30 minutes. Wherever you find yourself this summer, you can get the goods. Download Instacart for free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum $10 per order. Excludes restaurants. Additional terms and fees apply.
Have you ever covered a carpet stain with a rug, ignored a leaky faucet, pretended your half-painted living room is supposed to look like that? Well, you're not alone. We've all got unfinished home projects. But there's an easier way. Thumbtack is the app that makes it easier to care for your home. Pull out your phone and in just a few taps, search, chat, and book highly rated pros right in your neighborhood. Download Thumbtack and start caring for your home the easier way.
Content warning. This episode contains discussion of the murder of 2 girls. It also contains discussion about suicide.
So I'd like to start this episode with an apology. There is not going to be an episode of the cheat sheet this week. The reason for that is the time we are spending with you right now talking is the time we had planned and had set aside to record this week's cheat sheet. But there have been more filings in the Delphi case that are worth talking about, in our opinion, including a filing that actually mentions us.
By name, or at least close enough.
So we are going to discuss those with you instead.
My name is Anya Kane. I'm a journalist.
And I'm Kevin Greenlee. I'm an attorney.
And this is The Murder Sheet.
We're a true crime podcast focused on original reporting, interviews, and deep dives into murder cases. We're The Murder Sheet.
And this is the Delphi murders, an emergency motion for continuance, and another Frank's notice.
There's something interesting that I want to talk about concerning this emergency motion for continuance. Of course, as we all know, this emergency motion for continuance applies to the contempt hearing that's now scheduled for Monday, March 18th. And at the heart of that contempt hearing are allegations that certain materials may have been improperly leaked to YouTubers. And what's interesting is that this motion, it was first reported on last night by Russ McQuaid of Fox 59, but it was also reported on extensively last night by a variety of pro-defense YouTubers, all of whom seem to have gotten the motion prior to the time it officially appeared on the court docket. So that's interesting. So
that might be what they call in the business a red flag.
So draw whatever conclusions.
No, let's actually line this up. So a document, a verified emergency motion for continuance that only exists because of a catastrophic leak from the defense was then subsequently leaked to YouTube is what this appears to be. That's to me personally, just given all that has happened with this defense team, that is shocking. Not because, I mean, it's been pretty clear to us for a while now that there seems to be some sort of pipeline of information going on the pro-defense side of YouTube. But I think if you're subtle with that, what's the worst that can happen? But when you're actually giving these people documents that they're then reporting on before they're even appearing on my case, they obviously, I mean, I don't know whether there was supposed to be an embargo or something, but it's shocking to me that they would want to look that way. And I would be very curious, like, one thing I notice here is obviously this is a filing from David Hennessy, who's a lawyer for the lawyers. Maybe he feels he's not bound by the gag order. Maybe that's the explanation. But nonetheless, the optics of that are ungodly bad. And the benefit of that is that you make some YouTubers happy, which should be nobody's goal in any of this, because that doesn't matter.
And that they only
they're going to say a nice thing. Like, this is already a captive audience. These people who are like virulently pro-defense YouTubers are going to say nice things about the defense no matter what. You don't have to tempt them. So,
and I don't see if there's much of an advantage of the pro-defense YouTubers reporting on something Wednesday night as opposed to Thursday morning.
I'm just so embarrassed. I mean, like, it's embarrassing to watch this unfold. Like, I get secondhand embarrassment sometimes because, again, like, you're like destroying your own credibility for YouTube. And again, this is why it pains us to talk about YouTube, but YouTube has kind of inserted itself into this case. And in some cases, you know, in this case, it almost appears that one of the legal teams is playing along with that. And it shocks me.
So with all that said, we're going to read some of this document to you and discuss our thoughts on it. So one minor thing we're going to do as we read it, there is a gentleman, of course, who received photos from Mitch Westerman and then subsequently shared them with Mark Cohen. This gentleman also ended up taking his own life tragically. Because of this, out of respect to his family, we have declined to name him and have always referred to him as R, and we will continue to do so. And also, there's another individual named in this who we are going to refer to by her initials only out of respect for her privacy. So with that said, let's get right to it.
On March 1st, 2024, counsel took the deposition of First Sergeant Holman, at which time it was learned that there were recorded interviews that had not been provided to the prosecutor or counsel. It was also learned that the attachments to First Sergeant Holman's report had not been provided to the prosecutor or counsel. Mr. McLeland promised to get them. 2. On March 11th, 2024, counsel first received the recorded interviews of T.I., R., Rick Snay, Anya Kane, and Kevin Greenlee together, Mark Robert Cohen, and Kyra DeBrune, as well as the omitted attachments to the report.
I think the thing to mention from this first section is, well, there's two things. One thing, and this will become more important later, David Hennessy does appear to know how to spell your name.
I'm loving that. I was so excited when I saw this because he nailed it.
spelled your name correctly in this paragraph.
Things get a little bit complicated grammatically because based on the comma placement, it almost seems like we met with all the people who were mentioned ahead of us when you and I just met both of us at the same time.
Yeah, that's what the other thing I wanted to clear up. When he says that Kevin Greenlee and Anya Kane were interviewed together, the comma placement is confusing. He means that the two of us were interviewed together.
Kevin, Anya, no one else.
It wasn't us,
and a
Rick
group.
Snay,
Yeah.
T.I., R.
It's not.
De Bruin all in one room together.
No.
It was just Anya and I together.
Yes. And so this is a breakdown of all the people, I suppose, who were interviewed. I don't know who Kyra or Kira De Bruin is, to be honest. That's a name that's not familiar to me, so I apologize if I pronounced her name wrong, but everybody else on this list is familiar to me.
With that said, let's get back to it.
The recorded interviews contain a wealth of information that beg independent investigation of the source of various photographs that were posted on the internet and traded between people on the internet. Additionally, had counsel had the omitted materials prior to First Sergeant Holman's deposition, he would have asked many, many more questions, which need to be asked for proper preparation and representation. 5. The recorded interview of Miss I revealed that she recognized that Libby's sweatshirt was on Abby. She had confirmed that she received photos from a Tyler Carpenter, and there was some connection to a screenshot from George Rye, a former law enforcement officer. This was the first counsel had heard of those people and the first time he heard anything about Miss I. She also confirmed that she had corresponded with Mr. McClelland. She also indicated that she had been part of a small Facebook group, Reddit group, and YouTube channel, as well as a public discourse server with private chats. She also revealed that a person known to her had hired a private investigator to follow Mr. McClelland. She also identified other persons possibly involved in the dissemination of photographs and named Paul Mannion, which is another name counsel had never heard. Lastly, she agreed to provide screenshots to First Sergeant Holman, and they agreed to do that later. Counsel has not received any screenshots and first learned of their existence when listening to that recording.
So there's a lot of things to
unpack
here. First of all, when T.I. referred to a person who had hired a private investigator to follow Prosecutor Nick McClelland, it is very, very likely that T.I. was referring to Angela Sadlowski, who actually appears on David Hennessy's witness list. So that's interesting.
If you want to learn more about that whole situation and how bizarre the Delphi side of the internet can get, listen to our episode, The Delphi Murders, The Unacceptable. We'll link to it here. But it should actually give you we don't mean to do things that are prophetic, but we did that episode, and now people from the episode are appearing on this witness list. So it should give you a good view of maybe the credibility or lack thereof of some of those witnesses.
And another thing I really wanted to highlight is that David Hennessy says that Paul Mannion is a name which counsel has never heard. And that is a very, very, to say the least, an interesting claim for a couple of reasons. One of which is Paul Mannion is an individual who posted on the internet a copy of a communication he had received from Andrew Baldwin. So whether or not David Hennessy has heard of Paul Mannion, at the very least, Andrew Baldwin had one communication with him. And in fairness, it's entirely possible Andrew Baldwin has so many communications with so many different people that maybe that slipped his mind and maybe he never even mentioned it to David Hennessy. But if you want to talk about David Hennessy's knowledge or lack thereof about Paul Mannion, then you should consider something else. Paul Mannion has a YouTube channel which he runs with two other people. The two other people he runs it with are Angela Sadlowski and Courtney Parsons. Angela Sadlowski and Courtney Parsons both appear on David Hennessy's witness list. So is it credible that he is so familiar with 2/3 of the channel that he puts them on his witness list, but has never heard of the final third of the channel? Is that credible? I don't know.
No. I mean, well, I guess it kind of, it either way is a bad option. I guess it is credible if he's not paying attention to who his witnesses are. But then that's concerning because both of them Parsons and Sadlowski have extreme credibility issues and have made disgusting statements in this case. Sadlowski claims to have hired a PI to follow around a prosecutor, like just really bizarre behavior. Not exactly people that I would think have a lot of credibility within this space. So why are you calling them as witnesses? That kind of hurts your own cause, frankly. But so if that's just like sloppiness, then that's sloppiness. Or it's, it just feels hard to believe that you wouldn't vet your witnesses. And if you're vetting your witnesses, then his name has to come up because they're working together. They're all on a YouTube channel together. They appear alongside one another on the YouTube channel.
Yes, they're in different locations, but you see all three faces on the vast majority of their videos. And it would be as if someone called Anya in a case to talk about Delphi and then profess to have no knowledge whatsoever of me.
Who's this Kevin Greenlee person? Who cares?
So either David Hennessy doesn't know, they've never mentioned their colleague to him, or there's something going on here. I don't know.
It's either a lack of due diligence or it's just simply very hard to believe.
I was surprised by that.
Also, I should note that George Rye, his last name is not a type of bread. It's actually George Nye. So that's another YouTuber who comes up in this because this is the YouTube show now.
Okay, it's time to commit. 2024 is the year for prioritizing yourself. Begin your new smile journey with Byte, and you could start seeing results in just 2 to 3 weeks. Just order your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95 at Byte.com. Byte clear liners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces, plus they offer financing options, accept eligible insurance, and you could pay with your HSA, FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
This episode is sponsored by AutoTrader. Credit scores, down payments, interest rates. Car buying can be a numbers game, but you don't have to be a math expert to get the keys to your dream car. Just use Kelley Blue Book My Wallet on AutoTrader. Crunch your numbers and get your personalized results so you know exactly how much you'll pay each month for your car. It's like having a magic wand for your wallet. Presto! The car you've been wanting is now within reach. So hit the road and leave your calculator at home. Find your next car on autotrader.com.
What makes a life a good one? Is it the adventure you have? Or the friends you find along the way? Maybe it's pursuing your passion while striving to protect, defend, and save what you believe in every single day. So what makes a life a good one? In the Coast Guard, we think it's all of the above and more. But you'll have to find out for yourself. Visit gocoastguard.com to learn more.
And we should also mention that in that what Anya just read, there's a reference to a discourse server.
Discord server.
I think he meant Discord with a D server instead of discourse.
Serving up the discourse.
Now, Anya is going to read the next paragraph, which details the interactions that investigator Jerry Holman had with a man we call R. Again, this is the man who is said to have received crime scene photos from Mitch Westerman and then passed them on to Mark Robert Cohen. And R took his own life a few days after the interactions described below.
6. During the interview with R, he invoked his right to counsel more than half a dozen times, and First Sergeant Holman acknowledged that he had a Fourth Amendment right to counsel, even though that is the wrong amendment, but continued to question him. First Sergeant Holman referenced a guy from Texas, Mark Robert, who we now know is Mark Robert Cohen, and a K. Smith, which was a name counsel had never been made aware of in preparing for the contempt proceedings. There's no indication that Miss Smith was ever interviewed by First Sergeant Holman. First Sergeant Holman told Mr. R that the judge isn't very happy and he could be charged with contempt of court. He also told him that if he didn't give a statement, that would be obstruction of justice and possibly contempt of court. When Mr. R indicated to First Sergeant Holman that he was not comfortable speaking with him until he was able to seek consultation, First Sergeant Holman told him if he didn't cooperate and delete whatever he had, that if he called the judge and told her he's not willing to cooperate, I'm going to make a phone call and see if she wants to issue that order or not. This is when First Sergeant Holman also referenced that Mr. R could be charged with obstruction of justice and contempt. First Sergeant Holman then said, "Let me call the judge real quick and we will go from there." He then left the room for several minutes. He then returned and told Mr. R that he had talked to the prosecutor, and if he was not willing to turn over any pictures or information, basically that there would be consequences. First Sergeant Holman also said that the judge had said, if they have photographs, get them and get information about where they got them. First Sergeant Holman then told Mr. R his lack of cooperation was going to ruin Richard Allen's rights to a fair trial and going to really mess some things up for him. Then said, "Doesn't bother me any because it's all bullshit in my opinion." First Sergeant Holman also told Mr. R that this is some serious shit and that the judge is adamant that he get the photos out of circulation. Mr. R then confirmed that he didn't have anything like that in his possession and that there was nothing for him to delete or anything like that at all.
So one thing I think that's worth noting at the top of this is that both in that section and some sections to follow, we're going to hear references to Jerry Holman talking about the judge being upset and threatening contempt and things of that nature. And I think it's important to stress that this is not something that Holman cooked up on his own to make empty threats. The judge at this time was, in fact, very, very upset. And one of the ways we know that is that some emails that the judge has written during that time have been released. And in these emails, the judge went so far as to threaten to potentially put even Anya and I in jail.
Love that for us.
So he's not making stuff up. He is accurately reporting on the mindset of the judge. And whatever the people he speaks with choose to do with that information is obviously up to them. They could talk to an attorney. They could do what have you. But if you're in a situation where you're possibly dealing with a judge who is considering making contempt charges against you, I think it's good to know that information.
I'm not trying to be harsh, and I certainly want to focus on the substance, not the style, but it strikes me how loosely some of this is written. It's, I don't know, I find it kind of odd and off-putting to read some of this, because it's just like, it's very casual language. It just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like a legal filing at times. It kind of goes into this, like, quoting people and, you know, using pronouns in a way that I'm just kind of baffled by. I will say that one thing that's interesting to me here is it almost seems like, and I don't know if they're going to go fully with this, because you do have an affidavit from Mitch Westerman stating what happened, but it almost sounds like the defense is maybe starting to toy with the idea of disputing the facts behind the leak here. Because they're saying, well, R said he didn't have anything like this. So I'm kind of interested to see if they go down that path. Because that's obviously a different kind of defense than, this is not definitionally contempt. You know, it's kind of the actual innocence defense of contempt. So I don't know whether we'll see more of that. How that's going to... Well, actually, I know we're going to see more of that in this document.
We're definitely going to see more of that in this document.
But I don't know if, like, this document is the high watermark of that, but it seems like an interesting strategy when you do have people admitting to what happened. It also strikes me that this is all from David Hennessy, and then the most detailed recounting of what happened with Westerman is from Bradley Rosie. It's interesting that Andrew Baldwin doesn't seem to wish to speak for himself on this matter.
Yeah. So why don't we move on? The next section Anya is going to read is going to be about Holman's interview with the host of Delphi After Dark, Rick Snay.
6. Rick Snay was interviewed by telephone. Mr. Snay indicated he had received 4 photos from Kira DeBrune. Or Kyra, sorry if I pronounced it wrong. Mr. Snay also indicated that he had heard that other people had received photos from Mark Robert and Kay Smith. Mr. Snay indicated he had gotten the photographs Thursday, but no date was provided in his interview. First Sergeant Holman told Mr. Snay that the judge was very adamant that if any got released by anybody, she was going to issue contempt of court. March 13th, 2024 was the first time counsel heard the name Kira or Kyra DeBrune.
So I think just the main thing to note here is that over the course of the months since October, I believe Mr. Snay has offered several different versions of how he got the pictures and when he got the pictures. And so this is another version.
This is an early version.
So who knows? Let's keep reading and see what is next.
7. In the interview with Kira de Bruyne, she indicated that her source was through Reddit from a lordless warrior who she believed was Ron something. First Sergeant Holman then asked if it could be R, and she indicated that sounded familiar. She never firmly identified R. Whether lordless warrior was Ron someone or R, Miss de Bruyne indicated that the person had deleted an entire conversation. First Sergeant Holman told Miss de Bruyne that the judge was pretty upset and had said that if they do get shared, she was going to issue warrants for contempt of court. Counsel has been provided no information identifying Lordless Warrior as R. The true identity of Lordless Warrior needs to be investigated. Now, here's where that's
what you were talking about.
That's what I was getting at. Disputing, well, maybe he wasn't behind the Reddit. I don't know. It seems pretty...
I think there's pretty compelling evidence that R was Lordless Warrior. I don't think that's really in dispute. And I'm not really sure I even understand what the alternative theory would be. Are we to believe that Mitch Westerman, by his own account, by his own admission, illicitly took photos of crime scene materials left on Andrew Baldwin's desk or conference table and then shared them with his friend R, and then at the very same time, by a remarkable coincidence, someone using the name Lordless Warrior happened to get access to the same photos through a completely different channel and then shared them with people? Also, is that the theory?
I don't know. I feel like you don't want to write checks that you can't cash later on. And this feels like they're starting to do that, frankly. You don't want to just throw out, but what if it's this? And then like later on, it's like, no, because there's no evidence for that. I don't know. It just seems like, I guess I was impressed when the initial filings from Hennessy came out and it described having a bunch of defense attorneys come be the witnesses here, because it seemed like they were going for a defense that was, this does not qualify as contempt. Mitch Westerman was to blame here. Baldwin didn't do anything wrong. He was the victim of a crime. Now, you can agree with that. You cannot agree with that. You can be ambivalent towards that. But that's something that I feel like you're going to be able to argue pretty effectively. And maybe the judge sees it your way, maybe they don't. But once you're kind of getting, like, it's like, that's not enough. So we got to kind of slap a bunch of YouTubers on the equation. And also, maybe this guy wasn't really on Reddit. I just don't know where the thinking or the strategy is.
Let's get back to the document.
8. Mark Robert Cohen in his interview indicated his source was R and that R had told him to delete everything. Mr. Cohen had the impression that Mr. R was an attorney. Mr. Cohen also indicated that Mr. R had made a $500 donation to his daughter's Make-A-Wish fund, which First Sergeant Holman then referred to as a GoFundMe. The donation was done before and was unrelated to any conversation about or receipt of any photographs. First Sergeant Holman told Mr. Cohen that the judge had told the prosecutor, who had told him that if anybody doesn't produce these or isn't willing to delete or give up, she's going to issue orders for contempt of court, and whoever released them will get charged with contempt of court. So, I mean, it is our understanding that Mr. Cohen's daughter had some pretty severe health issues going on, and that R donated something so that, just kind of to make her life better, essentially, as, they were planning like a family trip, essentially. So I think it's possible that he was just trying to be, I feel really bad for R, given all that has happened. I think he's been kind of dragged into this mess, and also his family. And also there's been so much speculation and conspiracy theories around him. I imagine that's incredibly painful for people who cared about him. I just feel bad for him. I'm not a conspiracy theorist on this. I do feel like he was probably just trying to be nice to somebody he met on the internet who he realized was having a hard time in some respect. So it's certainly, I guess, maybe deserves some scrutiny, but I'm just saying, like, I've never seen any credible information or tip about, this is somehow, paying for the photographs, because that wouldn't really make any sense, because R gave the photos to Cohen. So why would the money be also going in that direction?
Yeah, I've never understood that aspect of it.
So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's theories that explain that, but that's just my opinion.
Well, why don't we get to the part of the document which discusses the two of us?
10. Ina Kane and Kevin Greenlee of the Murder Sheet podcast were interviewed together. They provided printed copies of photographs to First Sergeant Holman. They identified their source as Mark Robert, but they only had 7 photographs, while the prosecution has alleged that 9 photographs were disseminated. They did reference a cursor on the photograph of a close-up of Appy's head, which is curious and belies the theory that they were photographs of photographs. Miss Kane and Mr. Greenlee indicated the close-up of the head was to document something in her hair, which was supposed to be antlers or horns. That indicates some source other than what has been alleged. The end of the interview, Miss Kane and Miss Greenlee told First Sergeant Holman that they would provide him 100-plus screenshots. Counsel has not received any screenshots that were provided to First Sergeant Holman.
So first of all, I think it's worth pointing out, a lot of people misspell Anya's first name or her last name. This is an instance where your first name and your last name were misspelled.
I mean, when people are misspelling my first name, listen, we live in the United States. This is a thoroughly anglicized country. Gaelic, Irish, that people do not understand it. And like, I respect that. I've been dealing with this name for my whole life. So I'm not going to get mad if people put the accent on the wrong name, on the wrong letter, or put the wrong. And I mean, it's kind of odd that he got my name right in the first and then just completely butchers it throughout the rest of the document.
Spells her first name Aina.
But I think people need to understand my last name. People get my first name right, and then they will mess up my last name. And it makes me sad because they're messing it up on the last letter. They spell it Caine. And it's like, no, you're overthinking it. You're duplicating Anya within the last name. They're both 4 letters. And plus just Cain, it's like spelled like the murderer Cain, the biblical Cain, the Cain who was exiled after killing his brother Abel. It's on brand for me. Just go with that. Like that. People are out here in these streets overthinking this. That's what I hate to see, because it's like in many cases, you nail the first name and then it's just a disaster on the last name. And all you have to do is remember your scripture, remember your Old Testament.
And also, I just want to make the pretty obvious observation that when you're preparing a legal document and referring to people in a case, it's really worth taking that extra 10 seconds, extra 15 seconds to look at how their names are actually spelled. And say what you will about Anya Kane, she has never made a secret about how to spell her name. I'm sure it's spelled in Sergeant Holman's report. It's spelled in the name of the podcast. If you go to any of the podcast servers, it's spelled correctly everywhere. So I just find that, frankly, a little slop.
A lot of this document reads as very sloppy to me. And I'm not just salty because my name is spelled wrong, because I have a friggin' weird name. So I'm mostly just kidding about that. But I do think a lot of the language just doesn't sound like a legal document at points. I feel like a lot of this feels very rushed. I don't know that it is being rushed. I'm just saying, like, it reads like it was written in a hurry.
So to get to the actual substance of this section, he's basically relating what we reported and shared with you all at the time. We told you at the time that it's not mentioned here, but we mentioned the leak at the time to both the state and the defense. And for whatever reason, the state seemed to be a lot more interested in it than the defense was. And so we told you at the time that we ended up going in and having a conversation and an interview with Sergeant Holman. And we certainly turned over all of the pictures we received. Hennessy is suggesting here there's some discrepancy, that we turned over 7 pictures and the prosecution apparently somewhere said there were 9 photos. I don't know how to explain that discrepancy other than to say we turned over every picture we received.
BP added more than $130 billion to the U.S. economy over the past 2 years by making investments from coast to coast. Investments like building EV charging hubs in Washington state and starting up new infrastructure in the Gulf of Mexico. It's and, not or. See what doing both means for energy nationwide at bp.com/investing in America.
Welcome to another round of Boardroom or Miro Board. Today we talk retrospectives with Agile coach Maria. Let's go. First question. You've spent 2 hours in a team retro, but the only input you've heard is Dave's. Boardroom or Miro Board?
Boardroom. In Miro, Dave can't hog the space because everyone can add thoughts anonymously, online at the same time.
Correct. Next, you need the team to act on feedback fast. So you turn all those retro notes into Jira tasks.
Miro all the way. And I can assign those tasks to teammates.
You're nailing this. Now, you see hundreds of sticky notes from the retro. A real mess. But you organize them into 5 themes in just seconds.
Miro, I basically get back an entire hour when I use its AI tools for clustering.
And she's done it.
For a limited time, visit Miro.com/retro now for a free business plan trial to unlock advanced retro tools like private mode, voting, and two-way Jira syncing. That's Miro.com/retro now.
Then there's this bit about the cursor that appears in one of the pictures. That is true. There is a cursor that appears in one of the pictures. We had questions about it at the time, and it was explained to us that this was part of some sort of effort to disguise the source of the pictures.
Who was that explained to us by?
It was explained to us by Mark Robert Cohen.
Correct.
In other words, they didn't want the pictures to just simply be, oh, here's a picture of a photograph that was on a table. They didn't want it to be that clear. So instead, it is a picture of a photo that was then displayed on a screen with a cursor, and then that was taken a picture of. So it was an effort to obfuscate the origin of the picture. And that was a deliberate effort to make it harder for people to figure out where the picture originally came from. And then again, we have always tried to say as little about the content of these images as we possibly could, and we're going to continue to do that, but we are going to allude to things that are included in this filing. It's indicated that we suggested that one picture seemed to have been taken in order to document something in Abby's hair that could be said by some to resemble antlers or a horn. And Hennessy says, oh, if that's the case, then that means it had to come from a different place, a different source than what we've been told. And as to that, I suggest we all go back to the Frank's memorandum and look at page 30 of that document, and I'm going to read from that now. Above Abby's head were smaller sticks that had been placed over her hair, crudely mimicking horns or antlers. The amount of blood that would perhaps be expected at the crime scene based upon the location of the injuries of both girls was not visible in the crime scene photos. The defense has provided the court with 12 crime scene and autopsy photographs, marked as exhibits 5 through 16 as confidential. These photographs support the descriptions provided in the previous paragraphs. So what it's saying there is we believe there was something in Abby's hair, and we are including with this memorandum a photograph, which we believe documents that. And what we've been told since then is that the photographs that were leaked were prepared by the defense for the Frank's memorandum. So it sounds indeed like the photograph that we saw showing something in the hair is the photograph referred to on page 30 of the Frank's memorandum. And so it would seem that it actually supports the idea of it coming from the defense side. So I'm at a loss to understand why Mr. Hennessy is suggesting otherwise.
Yeah, I'm at a loss for a lot of this, honestly, when it gets into this. When you say that we have heard that this came from the Frank's memorandum attachments, where did we hear that, to be clear? Court filings.
Yeah.
Yes. So you're not alluding to some secret source that we're getting information from. You're
got to be careful these days.
Got to be, yeah. We're like, that's plainly stated in the court filings. But Yeah, it seems kind of I don't know, it seems bizarre at this late date to suddenly be, oh well, who knows? Reddit. What are these pictures? Maybe they're from a different source. It's just like, I don't know. It's pretty weak. It's weak.
There's a reference there to us saying we had over 100 screenshots to share.
Mark Cohen gave us the entirety of his communications.
With we said that at the time on our show. We also said it on the show that we had provided screenshots of all of those to investigators at the request of Mr. Cohen. So that was no secret. It's something we reported and shared. And so if due diligence had been done, I don't think that bit of information would come as news to Mr. Hennessy on March 13th. Obviously, we have no knowledge as to whether or not those screenshots were shared with Mr. Hennessy.
No. Yeah, we have no... I mean, if they weren't shared, then obviously that's a problem. If they were, then I don't know what's going on with due diligence in general with him, because that would be a pretty huge oversight on his part. And I guess at this stage in this, it's kind of this kind of trend with Hennessy, but also the people he's representing, Rosie and Baldwin. There's a lot of we didn't even get this until then, or we don't even know if we have this. And it's I just want to know how much of that is actually oversight on the prosecutor's part, and is it possible that some of it is that they're drowning in discovery and they're unable to find their own stuff, in which case that's a them problem. I'm just not they seem to have a lot of trouble getting a hold of stuff, and it kind of there's one explanation that's bad for the prosecution, there's also another explanation that's bad for them, and I don't really have any insight on which it is, but I don't feel like I should make the mistake of taking whatever they say for granted anymore.
Let's read another paragraph from this document.
11. Had these interviews been timely provided, counsel would have had many, many more questions for First Sergeant Holman during his deposition, and would have engaged in additional investigation, such as the people never before known, alternate sources of photographs, the true identity of Lordless Warrior, and more.
So
that's not a sentence, but okay.
This goes back to what you were saying before. They seem to be saying, well, maybe there's a different theory for all of this.
Ooh. I think you made a point when we were talking earlier about this, off the microphones, that I don't know. There's there's a bravado that Hennessy and Rosie and Baldwin all share, but something you notice when people have a lot of what I would kindly call bravado, there's a tendency to kind of explain away why you're having problems, because if things were just so automatically, if the facts automatically backed you up, then you kind of have to explain, well, why would you still lose?
Yeah, if I'm as tough as I say I am, and if the facts are all on my side, if I lose, it must be because the fight was fixed.
Exactly. If I go up and threaten somebody in a bar and challenge them to a fight, and then I start saying, but my ankle's busted, and I recently have had a lot of breathing issues, and I have a history of chronic health issues. It's I'm trying to explain why this might not go my way. And so this paragraph strikes me with that. If only we'd had more time to find the mysterious identity of a man who is clearly identified again and again. If only we had known about people that we should know about if we did our due diligence. If only if only there were alternate sources of photographs so that we could, come up with something else. It's just weakness. I just see this as weakness on their part. And I'm going to say something at the end, but I'm going to save it for that, because there's something about this whole situation with how they are dealing with the contempt hearing that really kind of sticks in my mind.
I'm very curious what you have to say,
Yeah.
But before we do, I want to jump down to, they are asking in this document to continue the contempt hearing, to delay the contempt hearing. And I thought the way they concluded the document was very interesting indeed. Can you read paragraph 17?
17. In Ramirez v. State, 186 Northeast 3D 89, Indiana, 2022, the Indiana Supreme Court, on transfer, reversed the denial of a continuance by this very court, when counsel specifically identified the late discovery of interviews and new allegations, the effect upon counsel's theory and preparation, and what counsel needed to do further due to the late discovery. That is exactly this case.
I think it's an interesting strategy to conclude by saying, hey, judge, remember when the court said you messed up on another case? I think this is the same. You don't want to mess up again, do ya? I think that's an interesting strategy. It's kind of a slap in the face. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. It's...
And also it says that this is, in that case, there were new allegations. I'm not sure what the new allegations are here.
There are none.
I think one takeaway for me from all of this and from earlier filings and going all the way back to October when there was an opportunity to have a hearing on this is that these attorneys really are not interested in having a hearing on this issue.
I was going to say they are terrified. Why are they terrified of this? Why are they terrified of this contempt hearing? They're terrified. Okay, in another universe, the way I would expect them to deal with this if they were not terrified is to run through it, to bulldoze it, get it over with, fight like hell, defend yourself, bring in all the experts, bring in all the exhibits, explain why it's not contempt, explain why, even if it is contempt, maybe Mitch Westerman is at fault, not the attorneys. Fight it, be incredibly aggressive about it, but just at some point, just putting it off continuously, these are men who quit the case rather than be criticized essentially in a hearing. They withdrew themselves from the case. And we can argue like that wasn't an appropriate use of Judge Gull's power. Those are fair arguments. But I'm just saying, like, they ultimately, they would have they chose to withdraw rather than go and face the music. And in this situation, with that at least, I think it was such a bizarre circumstance. I can kind of understand why you might do that, especially if there is any validity to the argument that that it could hurt your client. In this case, I don't really see how any of this blows back on Richard Allen. There's a specific, Hennessy himself recommended the remedy of contempt of court. So I don't feel like we're in uncharted waters anymore. And why not just fight it out and then move on? But they really do not want this hearing happening. They're continuing to delay it. Oh, maybe we should bring contempt charges against you guys. We want the judge and the prosecutor removed. This is desperation. This is desperation. And especially given that the team, at least has stated that they want a speedy trial. Like, if that is your number one goal at this point, then I don't know why you're doing any of this, because it's not about fighting it. It's about the delay tactics. These are delay tactics. And what are they so afraid of coming out? Don't we already know what happened? Or is there more that is going to make them look really bad? I just don't even understand this.
And it's mystifying to me because we've heard from all sorts of attorneys on all sides of this, and it doesn't seem to be crystal clear if what Rosie and Baldwin did in this case even should be considered contempt. And so when Hennessy filed a witness list indicating that they're going to have attorneys come in,
Great, that makes
presumably
sense.
to discuss that very issue, that could be an interesting discussion. And it could be something that could be potentially winnable for them. You could have an argument, and a successful argument is that what these two attorneys did not amount to contempt.
And that makes it so baffling to me. And also, this is something we've heard. We heard it from attorney Mark Inman, but also other people behind the scenes, other attorneys behind the scenes. In a situation like this, what are the punishments? Could they be thrown off again? That's not what we've heard. I don't believe they could. I think the punishments would range from maybe some financial penalty to one thing that Mr. Inman said that I thought was interesting is like maybe when they're handling certain evidence, they have to be supervised. Certainly embarrassing, but certainly not the end of the world, and certainly not getting kicked off the case again. So it's not like they're staving off some disaster. It would be bad, and I'm sure it would be upsetting to lose, but as Kevin said, nothing what I've heard from attorneys has indicated that it's a definite loss. So just go through it and move on. But I don't know why they're behaving this way at this point, because again, like, everyone's aware of the leak. It's not like this is going to be the first time anyone's hearing about it. So what is there to be scared of at this point?
Then I want to note, before we wrap up this section, that Attorney Hennessy filed a supplement to this motion this morning, which I think gets to some of the things you were talking about earlier. I'm going to read it. Comes now counsel for defense counsel and supplements with the fact he had a lot going on and was rushed, which led to him admitting that Mr. McClelland objects to a continuance, which he does. So he's indicating that when he prepared that motion that we've been reading from, he was rushed.
Yeah, this whole thing is just incredibly sloppy. I mean, it just is. I agree with Mr. Hennessy on some of his points. I'm uncomfortable with elements of Gull overseeing this and McClelland being the prosecutor on it. I think there's something to be said for what he's arguing there. I also think on some level, despite what I just said, I think there's some argument for doing all this after the trial is adjudicated. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with any of this. I just see those points and I feel like they're good ones. I feel though that, like, I don't know, it's like they've had a long time to prepare for this, to prepare for possible contempt charges. You know, again, given that that's something that Hennessy himself proposed. So this should not, I mean, the fact that this is all being rushed so much is just, maybe the focus should be on fighting it at the hearing rather than trying to stave it off indefinitely.
So let's move on and discuss the other filing in this case. And this was the third Frank's notice and request for a Frank's hearing. Can you tell us about that?
Right. So this is from Andrew Baldwin, and it represents yet another attempt to get a Frank's notice, a Frank's motion through in this case. There have been past unsuccessful attempts at that. From what I'm reading, this mostly recaps elements already adjudicated in past discussions about Frank's. So there's not a lot new here, to be honest.
They talk about some of the geofencing and some of the stuff with
that's new
with Turco that was also raised in a filing we discussed yesterday.
Right. I think it's interesting. I mean, to me, from what we've understood from speaking with experts, is that there's a barrier, there's a hurdle to clear with Frank's that, you know, really requires, like, this is a lie, this is a deception, this is a shocking omission. And they've not been successful clearing that bar in the past. One thing that I always go back to is just because something doesn't necessarily rise to the level of Frank's or throwing the case out, it doesn't mean it's useless for the defense. They can bring it up in front of a jury through their experts, or, you know, basically saying, here's how the prosecution or law enforcement messed up a case, or they didn't look enough at this, they looked too much at this. Like, they can bring all that up. It's not when they lose a motion on this, or the judge denies it, that doesn't mean that it can't be part of their overall defense strategy or used during trial. It just means that it's not rising to the level of having anything done about it.
Yeah, they can certainly use these things if they wish to try to attack the credibility of witnesses such as Holman, if that's what they want to do.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, but I guess what I'm saying is that it has to reach a level for something as extreme as a Frank's motion or a motion to dismiss to succeed, I think.
And what's interesting is that a lot of this, the new stuff is about the geofencing and Turco, and the Turco stuff is largely Holman prepared a summary of an interview with Turco, and he also gave us a recording of the interview. And we believe that the summary he prepared was not the summary we would have prepared. He highlighted different things, what have you. But he also gave them audio of the interview. And so if you're really trying to hide something, why give audio of the interview that you're trying to hide or distort? And they make the claim in here, well, you know, most attorneys aren't like us. Most attorneys
are sloppy idiots.
And they wouldn't listen to the audio. They just read the report and think, oh, there's nothing to be seen here, and move on. So they're making the argument that, yes, they turned over the recording, but that doesn't make any difference because they were still trying to deceive us in the summary. And I think it really is worth noting, everybody in this world has internal filters and such, so that if you are a diehard Republican and you have a friend who's a diehard Democrat, and you both go and hear a speech by Donald Trump or President Biden or whoever, both of you afterwards would probably pick different things from that speech to highlight if you were to prepare a summary of it. But the main issue is the raw material still available? In other words, if I had this summary from a Republican and a summary from a Democrat, would I still be able to watch the speech and draw my own conclusions? And in here, yeah, I'm sure Holman picked some things to highlight, and that the defense, yeah, here
doesn't agree with.
Yeah, and I'm sure the defense would prepare a summary that Holman didn't agree with. But as long as we have the raw material of the actual interview, and as long as Turco is around and able to give his analysis, I'm not sure what the huge issue there is.
No, I don't understand this. It seems incredibly, it's like, it's not a strong argument. It's not a strong example. Frankly, neither is what they're saying, again, repeating with Tony Liggett, the current sheriff of Carroll County, where they're saying that he didn't include evidence that they would have included in the PCA. You know, he doesn't have to. That's the first thing that you hear about PCAs when you start reporting on them. They don't have to put in everything. They put in things that get them to probable cause with a specific person. That's what they're for. And you can absolutely bring up things that go counter to the PCA and fight that in court, but that doesn't rise to Frank's. Like, that is a specific request, and people sometimes they think that, well, you know, it's a zero-sum game. It's either, you know, it's not. It's like you can bring it up and you can certainly use it to your advantage in court, but it has to rise to a level. There were so many. This was such an expansive investigation. There were so many theories and suspects that came up. Liggett cannot be expected to include all of that in his PCA. Like, if that was true, then where was any discussion of Ron Logan? Where was any discussion of Kegan Kline? Where was any discussion of the other suspects who I'm sure came up that we've never heard of? Like, that's just ridiculous. I don't understand I just don't understand that argument.
Yeah, if I were to prepare a probable cause affidavit summarizing the case against Lee Harvey Oswald for the assassination of President Kennedy, you wouldn't expect me to mention every single theory that's come up over the years. And yeah, I'd also note on a much smaller level, I would encourage the defense team to give some of these filings another careful read before they file them, because there's often small little errors in them. In this one, there's a reference to, for instance, February 13th, 2023, as to when the murders might have happened. Obviously, they meant February 13th, 2017. We often see things like that in the defense filings. And so it looks a little sloppy. And I think these things could be caught if you just give it more of a careful read before you file it.
I just feel like
we all make mistakes.
We all make mistakes, but a lot of this just gives I feel like so much of what the defense has done, especially recently, has just been completely improvisational. And I don't know if that's, ultimately their job is not to court the media or tell the most interesting story that is media friendly. It is to defend their client and get him the best defense that he can get. And when there's so much looseness and sloppiness that comes out again and again, you know, that doesn't make me feel better as far as the defense that he is receiving and the representation that he is receiving. And this is a concern that a lot of people have voiced around them getting kicked off. You know, is them coming back to the case good for him? One thing that I think is interesting is there's a discrepancy to me between the bravado that the defense team projects publicly in media appearances previously when that was still allowed, and then certainly in filings, which are often tailored to speak to the media directly, in my opinion. So there's that side of it. our client is actually innocent. You know, everything's wrong with the investigation. These people are all lying. But then when you look at things from a bird's eye view, a lot of the posturing seems to be actually incredibly defensive, reactionary, flying by the seat of their pants, because they're put on the back foot by their own client who made incriminating statements, not really damaged them. But instead of just dealing with that, there's just been almost like a kind of a continued effort to distract from that. And, you know, to me, the best way to move forward is to look at the mental health aspect of that, to look at the effects of incarceration on mental health and perhaps kind of deal with it in that way. That makes sense to a lot of people. He was despairing. He was mentally ill. He said things he didn't mean. Fine. Okay. Look, we can all run with that, I think. But this stuff, it just seems like kind of the kind of classic shiny keys. Look over here. And I mean, I guess like I just feel like there's no really reason to pretend otherwise at this point. And also, it's like, again, so much of this is just like the same stuff again and again and again, and it keeps not working. At some point, maybe the strategy needs to be looked at. I guess maybe the idea is that if we keep doing it, maybe it makes Judge Gull look biased, even though she's already ruled on most of these facts. I think that might be maybe like a long-term thing of like, let's use the leak in order to kind of make this as disastrous of a trial and a lead up as possible, so that we can then get a new trial.
There's a record.
Right. I mean, in which case it would be ironic, because then the side that leaked ultimately benefits from the leak.
Interesting. Well, we will obviously keep an eye on all of this, and apologies again for no cheat sheet. This is the time we would have been recording cheat sheet. I personally am disappointed because I was the one looking at cases this week, and I found some really interesting ones.
We'll definitely talk about those next week, though.
Well, next week there'll probably be new interesting cases.
Well, let's just hone in on the ones that we already have.
Well, we'll see. I always enjoy finding cases, so we may have these cases next week, or we may have different one next week. Maybe we'll do 2 cheat sheet next weeks, but who knows?
Maybe every episode next week will be a cheat sheet.
Well, we have at least one episode next week that's going to be about whatever happens on March 18th.
Yeah.
Well, that's another thing I should mention. We usually try to release an episode on Tuesday. I don't think we're going to release an episode next Tuesday, because we will be releasing probably a long episode on Monday about whatever happens in Fort Wayne.
Also, Monday might be nuts, because there's going to be unless it's continued, there's going to be a morning hearing and then an afternoon hearing. So if we want to hold our spot in line in the courthouse, we probably won't get to all that until late in the afternoon, because it's like there'll be a pause in between, but we might not be able to get out of there.
So our Monday episode will be our Tuesday episode.
Yes.
And then maybe everything else is a cheat sheet. We'll see.
It's all cheat sheets from here on out.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to The Murder Sheet. If you have a tip concerning one of the cases we cover, please email us at murdersheet@gmail.com. If you have actionable information about an unsolved crime, please report it to the appropriate authorities.
If you're interested in joining our Patreon, that's available at www.patreon.com/murdersheet. If you want to tip us a bit of money for records requests, you can do so at www.buymeacoffee.com/murdersheet. We very much appreciate any support.
Special thanks to Kevin Tyler Greenlee, who composed the music for The Murder Sheet, and who you can find on the web at kevintg.com.
If you're looking to talk with other listeners about a case we've covered, you can join the Murder Sheet discussion group on Facebook. We mostly focus our time on research and reporting, so we're not on social media much. We do try to check our email account, but we ask for patience as we often receive a lot of messages. Thanks again for listening.